It has been a long, long wait, but now we are here 5 weeks of, well, an unbelievable amount of discussion amongst teams, amongst the FIA, Formula One management, Liberty Media, the drivers, the team owners, the team principals, in order to try and have they just put a plaster over a bullet wound, Delucia Daniels?
If I have to say so myself, yes. I think that this is probably going to be the actual start of the season because the first three races were actually preseason testing extended. We kind of had a feeling that going into the season it was going to be pretty much okay, let's change this, let's do that because we have to do a trial and error at some point. So I feel like only now as we head into Miami with these new rule changes that have come into play, I think now we can finally say maybe the 2026 season has officially begun because with everything happening, it kind of feels like these rules make more sense in practice. In theory, I fear that it might let us have the same results and same action on tracks, especially with everybody also bringing new upgrades to the circuit as well.
Okay, so let's simplify all of this. 2026 came about. It started off 50% electrical power, 50% ICE power, internal combustion engine, for those who don't know. So what's actually going on at the moment is we've got drivers who are having to lift and throttle a lot. We are having drivers that are losing an incredible amount of pace just going down a straight. The speed differential between the cars because of this deployment is exceptionally dangerous. And the racing, let's be honest, has been a little bit artificial. Now, the big question that you have to ask yourself, are these changes permanent? And I can tell you, yes. Well, mostly. Okay, the engine energy usage tweaks that they have implemented are permanent. The power limits are permanent and the qualifying behavior are permanent. This will apply to all races from Miami 2026. But a couple of things that are still in progress. The new race start is going to be a trial for this weekend in Miami. And then under wet weather conditions, apparently there are some safety concerns and driver visibility, which until we have a wet race, we won't really know what kind of impact that is going to be. Now I go, yes, okay, they found out all of these problems. Now, all of a sudden, they could have done this from day one. Did they not anticipate that this was going to be an issue from the start before the season started?
I mean, if we could have called it as fans, I feel like people who work in the organization would have been able to make those decisions well ahead of time, especially given the fact that they had years to solidify these rules and regulations going into the season. So I do feel like a lot of what's happening is almost reactionary to things that we knew were going to happen. We had the drivers who said this was likely to happen. We had the team principals, the engineers also saying this was likely to happen. So I do kind of feel like the FAA kind of came late to this party, incredibly late. And although these rules are permanent, Sash, I'm going to be the one to say I do think at some point they're probably going to change again as we get to the latter part of the season, depending on how things go. Because at this point, I still feel like a lot of the rules that they've implemented counteracts one another. I think, we try to be as optimistic as we can with everything, but until I see it, I will be very, very cautiously optimistic about how things will go for the rest of the season.
And this is what scares me. The FIA is patching problems quickly, and that's why I mentioned the analogy of putting a plaster over a bullet wound. So they sort of try and say, listen, think of it of a software update and not a brand new operational system. So most changes are permanent for the rest of 2026. Some starts, certain safety tweaks, they're going to be trialed in Miami. And the goal is safer racing and drivers pushing flat out. Now, this is without a doubt going to make the lap times much, much slower. However, those who are sidetrack on the track are actually still going to see these cars going incredibly fast. Whereas in the first three races, they've seen these cars go incredibly fast and then slow down to just about a snail's pace because they didn't have any power. So people mustn't be too concerned about that all of a sudden they might be 2 or 3 seconds off the pace of last year's times, or 4 seconds, or even 5 seconds off the pace. Believe me, a Formula One car, when you see it, is still exceptionally quick. But I'd much rather see flat out racing than this artificial, and I hate to say it, and I'll say it again, Mr. Domenicali, you are horribly wrong. It was artificial overtaking. There wasn't anything that was real about any of the overtakes besides maybe 1 or 2. The rest were, oh, he overtook me because he actually had 1% more power. So now they are reducing the kilojoules, they're reducing the kilowatts, all of these kind of things. So lap times are definitely going to be slower. However, the racing should, ironically, and what is that other wonderful word? Paradoxically, be quicker.
Which is exactly what we want. But, with all this being said, I mean, a 5-week break has given us the perfect opportunity to go into Miami this weekend and just remind us that this is just a phenomenal sport. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing all the teams bring the upgrades. McLaren have said throughout, these 5 weeks that they've been working meticulously on bringing a new car by the end of the Canadian Grand Prix, which is in 2 weeks' time. So if you look at the upgrades and where we're going with Miami, we know McLaren have done really well there. So I'm quite curious to see, with the new rules being implemented and the new changes being implemented, will they be able to beat Mercedes? Because they had a chance with Oscar Piastri last time out. The safety car was very unlucky towards him. It really helped Kimi Antonelli in that regard. But I think maybe with these upgrades, the first batch being the aerodynamic package that they're bringing, I have a feeling, Sash, that going into this race, McLaren may or may not have an upper hand here.
So if we just look at what these rule changes what we can expect in sense of which teams are going to benefit and which teams aren't going to benefit. I want to take the first one, Aston Martin, who we know is a complete disaster with everything at present. However, they are very aero set up. And maybe this balance of power could help them with their Honda engine in terms of cooling it, etc., etc. So they all of a sudden could move from really last to somewhere in the mid-pack. I think the likes of Williams, if they can shed some of their weight, I think this could be a good opportunity for them. I think Racing Bulls, Haas, Alpine, probably all going to be roughly the same as where they were, with a little bit of assistance. But let's take our main 4 protagonists so far. Let's start off with Mercedes. I think Mercedes, this is probably a positive thing for them. They have been strong already the whole season, so I don't see that they're going to have any kind of issues with these regulations. Ferrari, if they can get their strategy calls right, I think this is a positive for them, except maybe the race start. That's probably where they were their most powerful. So I think the Ferrari going to be up there or thereabouts. Okay. Red Bull Racing, I think, is the biggest loser out of all of this, and that is because the car actually in race pace was superb, but now with more aggressive driving and flat out racing, this could help someone like Max Verstappen. But I think Red Bull the biggest losers. But I think the biggest winners, without a doubt, are McLaren. I think McLaren have got a very, very efficient car. There were 1 or 2 little elements that they struggled with pure pace. But now that they can go flat out, they can reward Lando and Oscar's aggressive kind of nature, and they can also reduce the reliance on perfect energy management. They're not going to have to sit and worry about lifting and coasting, just as all of the other teams. But as a package, I do agree. I think McLaren is definitely the team to watch out for this weekend and going forward.
Do you know, I want to go back to what you said about Red Bull, where you said they might be the ones who are the biggest losers this weekend. But I'm going to be a bit optimistic about Red Bull because they are bringing quite a significant package to Miami. And I think with what they're bringing, we've seen that the Red Bull powertrain hasn't been too bad. It's actually been surprisingly good in comparison to what a lot of people thought going into the season. But I think the biggest concern with Verstappen and with Hajar was the fact that both of them were complaining about the chassis and saying that was the biggest problem. So Red Bull have now decided to rectify that issue by shedding weight, similar to what Williams needs to do, but the main part about what Red Bull is going to do is they've basically built a new car modeled on the same car that they have right now, but with less weight. They're bringing in those new components individually. So I think with them, we have seen Verstappen hasn't had really great starts. I mean, his highest finish was 6th in Australia, and that was our very first race. But I think with where they have been, they have gotten points in all the races. I just think it's a matter of just trying to finesse the car a little bit more, because we have seen in some instances they have been quite good pace. It just hasn't been as good as the McLarens, the Ferraris, and the Mercedes.
So right now, McLaren looking very, very strong. Verstappen, well, we know. In anything, we know he's going to be good. And Ferrari has the speed. So if you're expecting a Mercedes domination era, maybe a little bit early, but it could be McLaren, Mercedes, or it could be Mercedes, Mercedes. They're back in the fight, but they're not going to run away with it as easily if all of this theoretical regulation changes transpires the way that we are hoping it does when we get to Miami this weekend.
And I think this might be a really good weekend for Ferrari to finally get that eluded victory that they've been waiting for since Carlos Sainz in Mexico almost 2 years ago. Can you believe it? It's crazy to think that it's been so far back. But I think if you look at where Ferrari is, especially, they've been the closest to Mercedes since the beginning of the season. And they've been also very, very close to them. I just feel like they can get their launch off. We know they've got the best starts. If they can maintain that and be able to really just go the distance with it, I think Ferrari are really on for a good win. And this is also a street circuit. We know Charles Leclerc tends to thrive also in these environments as well. It's a narrow circuit. It does reward, driver craft here. So can this also be Charles Leclerc's next win? I mean, that would be something I would love, even if it's just a sprint race win. I think it'll be really nice to see a little bit of a mixed bag, because we got that in the last race where we had a Mercedes, a McLaren, and a Ferrari on the podium. I have a feeling for the race it'll be very similar, to be very honest with you. It's just a matter of who out of the 6 drivers of those teams, even if you add in Verstappen and Hajar, out of the 8, it can be anyone's game at this point.
Yeah, it really disappoints me so much if you sit and look at Charles Leclerc, how many pole positions he's had and how few victories he's actually had. It's actually sacrilege but that's just my own personal opinion. Now, so this weekend, McLaren, that is what we go for. I'm going to beg the question and ask you to post in your comments, what do you think in terms of McLaren? Do you think they might have the edge, or who are you going for when it comes to victory in Miami? Now, South African Grand Prix. Let's talk about this a little bit, because all of a sudden Africa's on the map again. Our Minister of Sport, Minister Gayton McKenzie, has all of a sudden invited our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, to go and join him at a Formula One race this year. I find, wow, Gayton McKenzie is a very, very determined, strong man. And now all of a sudden he needs the president to come along to realize that it's not nearly as cheap as what he thought. And time, unfortunately, Delucia is beginning to run out for Africa and us, specifically South Africans, to get a Formula One Grand Prix. Turkey's back on the calendar next year. All of a sudden, there are fewer and fewer gaps.
It's very difficult to determine it at this point, because I don't believe as a country we'll be able to wholeheartedly fund a Grand Prix. I don't think we have the resources to do that without any private involvement and investors in the Grand Prix itself. And I think that makes complete sense to me why Gayton would invite the president to go to one of these Grand Prix to say, hey, we need the government's involvement, but we also need private equity pretty much to be involved in this process. I think we were aiming initially for 2027, 2028, But as it seems now, I feel like we're edging closer to maybe 2029, 2030. With Turkey being announced, great for them. Love that. Love that it's back on the calendar. But I also feel like at some point, Kyle Army's nearly there. We're almost there. It's just a matter, again, of fine-tuning little things and making sure that the infrastructure is correct for these Grand Prix. But what we do have is the fan base. We do have an audience for it. We have everything that we need to make this happen. But we just need money. Like anything else in the world, we need money to be able to really just host this to the scale of the Imolas of the world, of the Miamis of the world, to be able to have it at the same caliber. So for me, realistically, I would say we're probably looking more towards the end of this decade, 2028, 2030.
So just a couple of things over here. And, a lot of people might not understand this. Formula One owns all the rights. Television rights, radio rights, sidetrack advertising rights, paddock club rights, every single thing they own. End of story. So, for example, and I'm not too sure the sponsor of the Miami Grand Prix this year, but you go to some of the Grand Prix, like in the Netherlands, it's the Heineken Grand Prix. So, yes, private equity has to come in, but private equity cannot fund this. We can't have 13 different sponsors. You need one major sponsor who's going to have to put up probably a fortune of money to become the title sponsor. Thereafterwards, Formula One controls everything. Every single thing. The trackside advertising is all Formula One. The paddock club is Formula One. The television rights are Formula One. The radio rights are Formula One. The print media, the social media, everything is owned by Formula One. That is how it works. And this is why Mr. Gayton McKenzie probably sat and went, we've got the guarantees from government and that's 2 billion rand, etc. Sorry, sir, that 2 billion rand is not enough. You need 5 to 10 billion rand from government up front. Thank you very much. Get someone like a Heineken, a Red Bull, an Absa Bank, or whatever it is, and say, okay, you become the title sponsor, and for that you get X amount of exposure, this, that, and whatever. And that's how it actually works in the world of Formula One. Then, of course, it's a question of where. Kyle Army is just about ready. I'll be honest, I drove past Kyle Army the other day. I still haven't seen any works being done to upgrade whatever needs to be upgraded. And that's roughly 150 million rand worth of upgrades. So I still haven't seen anything happening over there. Then, of course, there is this new Cape Town bid. There's a couple of it. One is a street circuit. The other one is to now go and build a track, where I'm not at liberty to divulge where it is, but I have a very, very good idea where it is. It's somewhere between Cape Town and Century City. That's what I'll tell you. How's that? Okay, you figure it out. And there's an Air Force base close by there as well. Now, if you sit and look at that as an option, you need probably 4 or 5 billion rand just to build a circuit. But you've got a circuit at Kyle Army. So, with the greatest respect to all of the people with Cape Town in mind or whatever, you've got a circuit. You can go there. It can be done. It's not a major effort. It's just a question of now, Mr. President and Mr. Minister of Sport go over there, meet up, sign a deal, put the money in their account and say, yes, we want to be on the calendar from 2029 or 2030 and we want a 5-year deal. And that's what they need to do. I think originally that Gayton McKenzie came out and said we want a 10-year deal, and then all of a sudden it was a 3-year deal. FI is not going to go with a 3-year deal. Come in for 5 years, give us your 10 billion rand. Thank you very much. From there, the tourism, there's 3,000 team people that are going to come. Every single Grand Prix, you're going to have 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people coming from other countries to come and watch this Grand Prix and probably spend 2 weeks, one in a safari, the next in Cape Town on holiday. You will generate this money back, I promise you, within 2 or 3 years. It's not that difficult.